Well, thank you. Good morning, and thank you to the esteemed members of the committee. My name is John Schweppe. As stated, I'm the policy director at American Principles Project, a pro-family conservative group based out of Virginia. I was in South Dakota earlier this year to testify in favor of Representative Soy's website-level age verification bill. That bill passed the House, and as you guys might remember, ran into some trouble in the Senate. But I'm encouraged to see that the fine folks here today are still very invested in this issue and are, seeking to protect kids online. So I know my friend, Mr. Thayer, will be talking in a moment about the specifics of the App Store age verification approach, which American Principles Project also supports, and how that's different from the bills I've mostly worked on, which are the website level age verification bills. But generally, I just wanted to speak to the politics of this issue. So this is a bipartisan idea. Common sense idea. It's been something that folks have frankly agreed on for a long time, that we should be able to protect kids from harmful material online. 19 states have passed legislation to protect kids at the website level requiring age verification. There's now interest in adding on to those bills by adding this App Store component. Representative John James of Michigan actually just introduced an amendment at the federal level that would do that kind of thing nationally. So there's growing support for that idea. I wanted to emphasize something that, I know there's going to be some debate. Should we go this way? Should we go this way? I don't think these two concepts need to be mutually exclusive at all. In fact, not only are both great policies, but both address different layers of the internet stack. Neither is perfect on its own. Neither solves the problem of kids accessing online pornography or anything like that on its own, but both work better in conjunction with each other. One of the things I particularly liked about the App Store bill is that it requires app stores to send a signal to websites and apps signifying the age of the user. When we were discussing and debating the website level age verification, there's a lot of questions about, well, how is age verification going to work? Are the sites going to have to contract with third parties? What are the privacy concerns? And so this is a really smart way to kind of solve for all of that. And so we see both of these as working together. You are going to hear today from different industry folks arguing why websites should be responsible, why social media sites should be responsible, why app stores should be responsible, why device manufacturers should be responsible. The thing I want to point out is that everyone agrees that somebody should be responsible. And so I think we should all work together to protect kids from this harmful content. But the problem is just that nobody wants to bear the responsibility. And so ultimately, I think you have this absurd position where, the porn industry is arguing that other folks should be responsible for the content they're putting out there. That's kind of crazy. So, I think the truth is that everyone should be responsible. Parents obviously can't shoulder this responsibility on their own. I'm a dad to 4 kids. And, they're already, my oldest is 6, and he's already, trying to constantly get devices, stealing my phone. I mean, it's really difficult for parents in this environment. And so, I think we need to make it a norm that everyone's doing their part to protect their minor users. That means doing it at the website level, doing it at the App Store, doing device. But most importantly, we got to stop making excuses and just protect our kids. As it stands currently in South Dakota, online porn websites are free to distribute the most hardcore porn imaginable to children. There's no consequences for that. And this has led to a proliferation of porn use among young people. According to one study, and you guys have probably heard this before, but the average age of first porn use is now 12 years old. That's incredible. And that's just an average. So that means for many kids, it's far younger than that. So my hope for South Dakota, one of my favorite states in the union, the state where I was born, is that you guys can lead on this issue. I know we have 19 states that have done website level, but you have an opportunity here to put something comprehensive together that really tackles this issue that other states can model off of. And so I'm hopeful that you can accomplish that as we move forward into next year.
Thank you, Mr. Schweppe. This would be a good time for our committee to ask questions of John and his thoughts about even last year's legislation. So anybody have a question that would like to go first? Well, John, I have one. So the Paxton case in Texas, what can you tell me about that? Because I am confident that every person in the legislature, all 105 of us, want to protect kids. Yet we don't want to put some undue burden on our Attorney General's office to defend something that may not be constitutional. But the Paxton case is pretty important to the legislation that we think we could, that will be proposed anyway. What can you tell me about the status of that?
So far, I think the rulings leading up to this have been really encouraging. The Fifth Circuit obviously ruled in our favor. So we're going to have this case at the Supreme Court level. I think Joel can talk a little bit about that too, but I know my organization's writing a brief on it. The interesting thing here is that it's a debate over the last two cases, the Reno v. ACLU, Ashcroft v. ACLU, when Congress tried to do this in the 90s. And the biggest difference, I think, here today is that there was some debate back then as to what was the least restrictive means to accomplish this compelling state interest of protecting kids from harmful material. And now I don't think there's really any debate on it. Age verification really is the least restrictive means. We have the ability to do this. The technology has improved dramatically. So that's going to be something that we argue in our brief. But we are actually pretty confident in this case. I know it's going to be widely debated. It's going to have huge consequences. But we think that Paxton will win that case, and it'll kind of pave the way for more age verification legislation across the country, not just on the porn issue, but on social media and all sorts of things.
Well, you're a sharp South Dakota kid then, evidently. So when would you say that we'll see some progress, or when will that case come to fruition?
It should be this term. So all of our briefs are due in November. Oral arguments haven't been scheduled yet, but it'll probably be early in the spring, and then we should have a ruling in May or June. Somebody on the call could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the estimated timeline right now.
May or June. Okay. Well, we wish it would be earlier. Anybody else? Any other questions from the committee? Representative Van Huysen?
Go ahead.
Yeah, real briefly. Thank you, Mr. Schweppe, for your testimony. That was interesting. And you mentioned the same thing I've observed, which is there seems to be a bit of hot potato going on here about who exactly has to do this. I just have to ask, who is the blackjack dealer in the picture behind you? That's my question.
I'm a bit of a poker player, and so my staff, that's AI, I guess. My staff put it together to make fun of me, so I guess I keep it in my shop for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Representative Van Huysen. That's a good one. Okay, Representative Soy, you had a question. I'm sorry I didn't catch you on the first one.
Thank you. So as we're kind of looking at options, it's basically website level, app store, and then devices. Can you tell us, looking at those three different approaches, kind of what the biggest barriers are going to be? Because, there's always going to be somebody that comes against it, and just kind of what we're looking at when we actually get into the committee hearing and we're getting into the political work, just what we're going to be up against in those three different avenues.
Yeah, so I think basically the order you listed them in is politically easiest to hardest. And so that's been our approach at American Principles Project. Obviously, we have a holistic view of this, would like to do it all across the stack. But the higher up you get towards the device level, the more companies that kind of have issues with it and will petition you guys to not do that sort of thing. So with the age verification website level legislation, typically it only really involves the porn industry. There's some debate from social media companies as to whether they should be included or not. Once you rope them in, that obviously changes the political calculus a little bit. But we've found in the 19 states across the country where we've worked on this, that this has been a pretty easy lift. Most of these have been bipartisan, near unanimous majorities, and not a lot of industry opposition beyond the Free Speech Coalition, which represents the porn companies. Once you go on to the App Store level, you're going to have a little bit of more of a lift. Apple and Google are obviously going to aggressively oppose that. I believe NetChoice is on this call. They may oppose that. I can't speak for them. So you'll have a little bit more pressure on this. And we've seen in the states that sometimes this is a little harder. That's why there's fewer age verification for social media bills that have passed than the porn bills. And then finally, the device level one, that's when you really start to hear from, I mean, pretty much every company that has any sort of device. You'll even hear from streaming services, TV companies, Roku, people like that. And their concern, obviously, is they don't want to deal with the regulation. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that, number one, I think you guys absolutely have the constitutional authority on all three of these questions. And number two, somebody does need to do this. Now, what we've found is that, interestingly, each one is better at doing certain things. So the website level is much better with the US-based porn websites, but there's still the issue of apps. There's still the issue of inappropriate content, getting through that. There's also foreign websites. That's why we kind of need federal action on this. So what we're doing is we kind of have a leaky boat, and I think everyone here is trying to, bail water out of that boat, plug the hole. We're going to have to work together and come back at this apple and bite at it a few times to actually get to the point where we're protecting our kids. And, those of you with kids know, this is an almost impossible task. But I'm really encouraged that all these states are trying to get started on this. And I think that because there's political momentum, we actually might be successful this decade. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Representative Soy, or can I move to the next?
Nope, go ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome. Senator Larson, you have your hand up. Good morning.
I do. Good morning. Just a question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
For John, just given the kind of information that you just gave and your position as an expert in this field, I'm curious. I went to a session this last summer regarding what happened in Utah over the past, I would say, year and a half. And I'm so sorry. I should have taken better notes or remembered better. But if I understood correctly, there was a bill on this topic brought forward. Then there was a case that was litigated. Then the bill changed significantly, and it kind of came to a place where it was bipartisan happy. I don't know if that makes sense. I could be completely mistaken about that. But if you have knowledge on that case and that legislation, because I remember it was such a big deal at the time, could you refresh us about that and maybe offer your analysis if you have detailed knowledge of that, if that case and legislation offers anything that we could learn from here in South Dakota, along maybe the three kind of buckets of information that we're talking about, either the website level, the app level, or the device level, or just in general? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to answer that. Some of it I want to defer to Mr. Thayer, who will be speaking later because he is a lawyer and has worked on specifically on the Utah legislation. I do know that some of the issue was the idea that we're going to try to do social media. And so the court case had concerns about that and, the First Amendment issues at play there. What's nice about the porn issue, the website level age verification we've been trying to do, is that, this is a little bit easier constitutionally, that, even the Supreme Court has given us a path forward on this, as long as we're using least restrictive means and that sort of thing. So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get over my skis too much on that. But I do think, there's some things from Utah that we've been able to take away and implement in some of our efforts elsewhere. Especially, one of the things I really appreciated that they worked on was all these different ways to do age verification. That was a question we were getting a lot early that I remember receiving in South Dakota last year was, how are we going to do this? What are you going to require exactly? And the bill text from Utah actually included, 6, 7, 8 different ways to do it, and then also allowed for more. And then, of course, I just want to point out this App Store component adds another one. That's a pretty effective way to do this. So I hope that answers the question to the best of, what I can answer.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Senator Colbeck, thank you. Senator Colbeck, you had a question.
Yes. So going back to the timing of the Paxton case, I believe. So we're in and out of here by next March, right? So we won't know until May. Is kind of the way it sounds, but best case scenario, and then eyes wide open. I'm guessing that the other side thinks that they've got a pretty good chance too. So, is there? I guess are you suggesting? And I don't want to put words in your mouth though, but there's 3 different levels: app, website, device. Are you suggesting 3 different bills, or are you suggesting one big bill to address those 3 things?
I think that I leave that up to the wisdom of you guys and what best works for South Dakota. I will tell you, I think what we've run into in the past is when we try to combine bills like this where there is a constitutional question, it probably makes sense to put a severability clause in there just in case. So, if you guys are, I'll just tell you, I'm pretty confident in the case result. But, if you were worried about website level being declared unconstitutional, but you thought App Store level would be okay, put the severability clause in there so that part would get stricken. But, ultimately, I think the most important thing is to move forward. We're going to have a lot of test cases in the courts on this because it's internet law. And as you guys know, and as you can see from some of the folks on the call, the tech industry, the internet industry is probably the most powerful industry in the country. So it's going to take a lot of work to try to protect kids. We're going to have to probably revisit this. Hopefully I'll be making several trips out to Pierre over the next few years. But I think ultimately it's important to get the law right and do everything we can to protect kids.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments, because that's kind of where I'm going with it. It's like I think we need to divide and conquer, right? I mean, we need to make sure that we're not in this situation again. The draft that came and the legislation that came, we couldn't get through the Senate, but yet it probably would have been stayed too, so it wouldn't have gone into effect as a state law. So we really need to figure out and pick our battles on this, and it sounds to me like we need to take the low-hanging fruit and then pick larger and larger battles as we continue. Would you agree with that?
Well, I have obviously different incentives than you guys do, so you have to make those decisions for yourself. But, what we're looking at, we're confident that age verification, even at the website level, is constitutional, that this court will rule in favor of that. And, our goal is to try to ultimately get as many states to pass that as possible and then push for federal age verification as well. So would love to see South Dakota join in on that. I think on the legal questions, you should probably speak with the Attorney General on that. But this is one where I'm really not that worried. I mean, again, we had 19 states on this. And if you read the cases from some of these courts, they've been pretty favorable so far.
Thank you, John. Representative Soy, you had your hand up for a further question or comment?
Just a quick comment, just to clarify on that the Texas law is in effect while this case is going on. The injunction was lifted, so just to make that clear.
Thank you. All right. Any further questions for Mr. Schweppe? John, thank you for taking the time to present to us today. We appreciate your information. It's very valuable, and we hope to see you at the Capitol sometime next session.